My name's Kayla, this is Cinnamon Peaches and Sage, and today I'm going to be looking at which Pokemon are most likely to get Megas in Pokemon Legends Z-A. There are a lot of videos similar to this coming out right now, but what makes this video a little bit different is I'm focusing on which Pokemon are most likely, not which Pokemon I would most like to see. Because there actually are some patterns from previous games that we can use to make predictions. What are those patterns from previous games? Well, one of the big patterns is that most Mega Evolutions come from Japan-based regions. This means Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, and Sinnoh. The story of X and Y, the games that originated Mega Evolution, was heavily inspired by World War II. The ultimate weapon is Pokemon's version of a nuclear weapon, and the only time nuclear weapons have been used in history has been on Japan. The fact that most of the Mega Evolutions come from Japan is significant because we know that Megastones were created when the ultimate weapon was fired and hit evolutionary stones. Because the Megastones are Pokemon specific and most of the Pokemon they're specific to are from Japan-based regions, it makes sense that the war 3,000 years ago was between Kalos and some unnamed Japan-based region. This is why, sticking to the current lore, it's most likely that most of the Mega Evolutions will come from generations 1 through 4. The only other Pokemon that get Megas from other regions have some connection to war. Audino is a nurse and Diancie is a queen, which would be the leader in a war. Historically at least, kings and queens don't usually do that much with war nowadays. It's entirely possible for them to just change up the lore around Mega Evolutions so that they can add Mega Evolutions from other regions. They don't even necessarily have to change things from the war 3,000 years ago, they could just create a way in the game to manufacture Mega Stones. We already know that some Mega Stones in Pokemon are manufactured anyway. For example, we have 2 Mega Stones for Mewtwo. Mewtwo would not have existed 3,000 years ago and therefore could not have had a Mega Stone created when the ultimate weapon hit down. And no, the Mewtwo stones don't work on Mew, so they can't just be weird Mew stones. This means that at some point Mewtwo stones had to actually get made. This is consistent with the lore and totally fine because all that's required to create a Mega Stone is a lot of infinity energy hitting a Mega Stone with a Pokemon probably getting destroyed or around in the process. DNA at least. Anyways, that's the first thing I'm going to be looking at when deciding which Mega Evolutions are most likely. Would it actually fit with the established lore? Another thing I'm going to be looking at is patterns from previous games. Certain Pokemon got Mega Evolutions and certain Pokemon didn't. We can use some of the patterns around which Pokemon got Mega Evolutions to figure out which ones might get them in this game. I'm also thinking about competitive balance because while they didn't think about that much for Mega Evolutions in the past, I think they've realized by now that that was kind of a mistake. So if a Pokemon is really powerful right now, like Dragonite, it's, in my opinion, not very likely. Though possible, because they've made some pretty overpowered Megas in the past. And finally, to make these decisions, I'm going to be looking at which Pokemon are most popular from each generation. This wasn't always considered when they're deciding Megas, but I think if they're trying to market these Pokemon as like the big reason to get this game, then it makes sense for them to pick relatively popular Pokemon. Based on all of the information we have, Flygon is the most likely Pokemon to get a Mega Evolution. It's in Hoenn, the region closest to where the ultimate weapon most likely hit down. It's not entirely overpowered, so giving it more power wouldn't break the game. It's a very popular Pokemon, and a lot of people want it to get a Mega anyways. I think if they're gonna add more Megas, Flygon makes the most sense. Other Pokemon that I could see getting Megas are Breloom, Luxray, Staraptor, Ludicolo, Shiftry, Pachirisu, Shuckle, Wobbuffet, Xatu, and Furret. While some of these Pokemon do have some use in competitive, they're not like the most competitively viable Pokemon. They're relatively popular, and they're from the right place for them to get Megas. I also think that Nidoking is pretty likely to get a Mega because he's a very popular Pokemon, but if they give a Mega to Nidoking, they really should give one to Nidoqueen as well, and with the lore behind these two Pokemon, it gets a little murky. I really hope they give Megas to both, but I could see the argument why they might not. For Pokemon in non-Japan based regions, they would have to have a reason to be involved in the war to get a Mega Evolution if my theories about the lore are correct. However, this doesn't entirely rule out Pokemon from later generations. Some Pokemon that I could see getting Megas are Golurk, Dragapult, and potentially even Armarouge and Ceruledge. All of these Pokemon are popular, are somewhat competitively viable, but not entirely, and have ties to Warfare specifically. And finally, what about the starters? Are we gonna get Megas of the starters that we choose in Pokemon Z-A? I actually don't think, based on the information we have, that we're gonna get Mega Evolutions of the starters that we initially picked. We didn't get Mega Evolutions of the starters in X and Y, so I don't see why this would be any different. It wouldn't really make a lot of sense for a regional form like that to get a Mega Evolution with the current lore. Of course, as I said, they could just totally change the way the lore works, but anyways, interestingly though, in X and Y, we actually got a second set of starters. We got the Generation 1 starters, and they were able to Mega Evolve. The Generation 1 and 3 starters already had Mega Evolutions, so from Japan-based regions, that leaves us with Generations 2 and 4. Since I think that Piplup might end up being the water starter in Pokemon Legends Z-A, that leaves the Generation 2 starters as the most likely starters to get new Mega Evolutions. But yeah, from Flygon to the starters, what Pokemon do you think are going to get Mega Evolutions in Pokemon Legends Z-A? Make sure to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and join our Discord Capsule Monsters where we discuss Pokemon theories. I hope you have a great day or night, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!